It's cloudy, but the weather is like 75 degrees up here. Feels awesome. Woo! Love it. If only Austin was like this all the time. Okay, so we're talking about contracts today. Yay, contracts, legal stuff. First off, a disclaimer, I am not a lawyer. I do not play one on TV. I am not a law expert. So take what I say with a tiny grain of salt. These are just basically my experiences. These are basically my observations. But if you have a specific legal issue or question, or if you need some specific legal advice, I would strongly recommend talking to an attorney, talking to an expert, because that ain't me. Saying, well, Nate said on YouTube is not going to hold up in court. I've tried it. Okay, so let's talk real quick about what are the basic components of a contract first. A contract is just an outline. It's an agreement. It's saying that party A is going to do something. Party B in response is going to do something else. It outlines the specifics of the timeline, any costs related. It outlines how long the relationship can last between both parties. It outlines how you can end that relationship. It also outlines how the approval process is going to happen, how the delivery process is going to happen. It's just a statement. Good contracts are actually supposed to try and protect both parties. That's what negotiation is all about. When you're trying to nail down the specifics of a new job, you want to make sure that those terms are going to be something you feel good about as a freelancer. Or if you're looking for an employment position, you're going to negotiate the terms of what's your salary, how much PTO you're going to get off the top on the starting, any special considerations. Contracts are just outlines. Okay, so we've defined what a contract is. Let's talk about some of the things I wish I put in my contract sooner. So top of my list is revision clause. Basically, this clause is just capping how many times you're going to go back to square one and rewrite something. In my opinion, this is just how I do my contracts, is if you want me to make something a little bit faster, bump it up by 5 clicks. If you want me to change the oboe to a flute, if you want me to, hopefully there's no angry wind noise there. If you want me to change this chord from first inversion to second inversion, if you want me to do tiny, minute things, then I don't consider that a rewrite. I don't consider that a revision. A revision for me is, this is not working, let's go back to square one and start over. That for me is a revision. And in my contract, I say, for the price I've quoted you, I'm going to give you 3 included revisions. Anything past that is an extra cost. Now, I don't list what the actual cost is in my contract. I say that should we go beyond 3 revisions, what we will do is we'll have a meeting and we'll discuss things and we'll make a new cost for this 4th revision, and will be a mutually agreed upon dollar amount. So maybe it's sloppy of me to not include or quote the price for those additional revisions once you get past the first 3 free included revisions and the original price. But the thing is, with the exception of this one experience, I've never had to use it. But I had a client early on hired me to write one song that she wanted to use as a part of a pitch to hopefully get funding to make a full Broadway musical. And I was writing music, working with this client, like I said again, very early in my career. And so I gave her version after version after version, each time starting anew. And about the 5th or 6th time, I asked her, hey, what's not working here? Why are we going back and redoing version after version after version and starting from square one? Well, her response kind of shocked me. She said, oh, I just wanted to see what you would do. I just wanted to see what you would create. And she even said, I didn't see any kind of revision cap or revision clause in your contract, so I figured I could just request as many as I want. And she was right. She could. At no additional cost to her, she could have me writing thousands upon thousands of iterations of this Broadway spec piece. Just over and over again, just to see, because you have to remember, the more time you take to do something, the less you're actually getting paid per hour. If you have a job you accept for $2,500 and you take 5 months to do it, you're not actually earning as much than if you have a job that you do in 1 week for the same $2,500. It's a simple concept, but sometimes I think people forget that when they're talking about their rates, when they're talking about their budgets and these contracts. So the top of my list would be revision cap. Second thing I wish I'd add to my contract sooner is basically a clause that says I, as Madsen Studios, have the ability and the right to showcase my work in my portfolio. What I've learned, especially working with some larger companies, is in buyout situations particularly, they can say, well, we're never going to give you the right to put this in your portfolio. You can, of course, list something on your resume, but you can't showcase it on your demo reel or your video reel. You just can't without having some kind of language in your contract that specifically states you can. So my contract states that once a game is made public or once the game is published, I will be able to showcase, just for promotional reasons, the content I provided, the content I created for that game. I've not had any clients object to this when I have it in my contract. I've even had clients put it into their contracts if they're the ones providing the contract to me. I've had, hey, I want to be able to showcase this in my portfolio. The only problems I've had is when I didn't ask for it, I didn't have it in my contract, it was nowhere mentioned, and I already had signed something and I'm already working, and it comes up, hey, I would love to promote myself and promote this work that I did. Can I put it in my demo reel? I've had some larger clients say, no, you cannot. That kind of sucks. So I learned to start doing that. Let's say a game trailer showed level 1 as part of the teaser for the game, and they had some of my music I put in level 1. And this is out on YouTube, this is out on the internet, this is live. In that case, I would say, okay, level 1 music has been released by that company. And of course, there's always political things to consider. I would always talk to my key point of contact and say, hey, I love the trailer you guys released. It's using my music, it's out there live. Per the contract, it says anything that's made public or once the game is formally released, I'll be able to share and promote my stuff for promotional reasons on my demo reel. And I would talk with them and say, okay, so since that's been done, let me go ahead and do that real quick. But I want to just shoot you an email and we can talk about it real fast. I feel like that's a useful thing to do. You don't want to piss anyone off. You don't want to get yourself in any kind of legal liability or issue like that. In some cases, it can be as easy as just retweeting something or linking something that the company has already done, saying, hey, look, I did this. But yeah, that was a weird voice for the hey, look, I did this. You need to have some kind of language in your contract or in the contract that the company is giving you. You need to negotiate that saying, I want to be able to share this on my portfolio. And by the way, it's very common to say portfolio, this is not going to be for downloads, this is not going to be commercially sold again, that sort of thing. And this mostly only applies in buyout situations. Examples when you are keeping the rights to the music you're providing, you're basically just giving the license to a client, you don't have to worry about that so much because you are the owner. You might still have to worry about the schedule of it though. You know, perhaps client doesn't want you to release something that's not made public yet. That's very, very common. So you do have to be careful about that. Number 3 for me would be point of contact, final authority. All this does is it dictates, lays out in black and white who is going to be the person to have final authority over saying yes or no on a project. The reason why this is useful is because I've been in situations where you have a group of people, and let's say they get into a disagreement and Bobby Fred does not like the music you did for level 7 and Judith thinks it's the greatest thing. Well, then you have a conflict. You have this whole other discussion that has to happen. And when you're working as a freelancer, and so I would get on these Skype meetings that would be about 2 or 3 hours long each. And this was a weekly meeting. And then they would talk about things and they would get in disagreements with me right there on the Skype call. Well, I disagree with you. Well, I think this. Well, I think that. And suddenly my direction is cluttered. My scope, my target is not clear because I have different points of references. I have people telling me different things. I have people telling me different direction. So you want to avoid that. In some cases, you don't have to worry about this. For example, if you're working with a team of one person, you have your key contact. You have your final authority. It's that dude or that gal, and you just have to make them happy with your content, and you're golden. But in other cases where you have multiple people, it's very useful to assign and dictate and just ask the client, all right, well, I have meetings with 8 of you guys, but I need to know when the proverbial poop hits the fan, who is the person that has final authority to say yes. I would highly recommend, if you're working with a team that has multiple people and they don't know who the final authority is, that you set something up, you set some terms in your contract saying, okay, well, let's agree that this person will be the final authority. And then you guys can go off and have your debates and your discussion for as long as you want without me involved. And then that one person comes to me and gives me clear, concise direction. The subpoint to number 3, talking about final authority, is meetings. Are you going to invoice your client for every single meeting that you have? It depends. This is really your call. My advice, my suggestion would be to really understand what type of meeting schedule the client may have in mind. If this is a weekly meeting, then yeah, you might want to invoice for that. If it's not, then don't worry about it. I kind of take mine case by case. It's really tricky to change a contract once you're in it. So if you don't invoice for meetings, then suddenly you find yourself in a situation with the client where you have a whole bunch of meetings all the time and it's taking up time where you could be working. It's going to be a tricky conversation to say, hey, look, I'm not saying it's impossible, it's just going to be tricky. It's a lot easier if you just say, hey, if we're going to have this type of meeting weekly, then this is my rate for it. And just get that out of the way and they agree to it on the front end versus trying to change it on the back end. That's much harder to do. Another thing to consider is each state has sometimes slightly different, sometimes very different laws when it comes to freelancing and business and regulations, all that jazz. And if should you have a point of litigation with a client, well, let's say the client is out of state. Let's say the client's in California, you're in Texas. Well, which law is going to be applied here? There's a lot of different things here, but it's just a lot more clear if you just say, in the case of litigation, the laws of California will be applied to this contract. Or in the case of litigation, the laws of Texas will be applied to this contract. It can be useful to have that listed. Another big thing I would avoid is P.O. boxes. Do not accept P.O. boxes. I actually don't accept P.O. boxes at all on my contract. I say, what I do is I list all my points of contact. I have my name, my email, I have my cell phone, I have my physical address, and then I have a spot where the client puts theirs in, and I say, all right, I need your name, your email, your phone number, and your physical address, and I literally state P.O. boxes are not accepted. Why? Because P.O. boxes are harder to track down. I had a client one time who ripped me off, pretty bad situation, and I was really early in my career. I think this may have been the 2nd client I took on, maybe 3rd. So I was pretty stupid, didn't know all the things I should be doing, all the things I should not be doing, and I ended up accepting their P.O. box as the address. So it's one of the few clients I actually had to sue for non-payment for a whole bunch of work I did that they were using. Well, I only had a P.O. box, and so it was extremely hard to track them down. In fact, I've never seen any of that money that they owe me. That's a huge bummer, but require physical addresses. It's much safer that way. Well, maybe not safer. Require physical addresses. It can be easier to track. And just a little quick blurb. Maybe I can do this way. The ocean, or the lake. Oh, the ocean. Aye, what an ocean. Yay. A little quick blurb. When you talk about contracts, when you start talking about people getting screwed over, it can make you nervous as a freelancer. I've worked on 575 projects, and I've been screwed over maybe 5 times. And when you think about that, I mean, every time you get burned, it eats at you. It pisses you off. It makes you really angry. You want to just rah! But when you think about 5 out of 575, most people out there are good. Most people out there are going to do the right thing. Most people are too busy trying to make their own content, and they want to do good work, and they don't want to make a bad reputation for themselves, that they're going to treat you right, or at least treat you appropriately. They're not going to try and steal your work. But always work with a contract. I've learned that the hard way a couple different times. Work with the contract. All of your terms spec'd out. If you're not comfortable reading contracts, then reach out to a lawyer or legal person and get some input. Read up on it. There are sample contracts online. There's books. Aaron Marks, he's a friend of mine. Was actually very kind to feature me in that book. It's on its 3rd edition now, I believe. There's a whole chapter about contracts in it, and he provides sample contracts. You can also find contracts online. Legalese, contracts, that whole thing can be an uncomfortable topic, but you really need it. You really need to have the protection of a contract. You need to have the finality of, this is what I'm agreeing to, this is what I'm going to do, and this is what you're going to do in response. So I hope that's helpful to you. Again, not a lawyer. I don't play one on TV. I love to watch Law & Order. I love to scream objection randomly at home and at the workplace. But I'm not a lawyer, so if you need some actual advice, I'd reach out to someone who can give that to you much better than I can. So if you like what I'm doing, if you like these videos, please subscribe. If you want to hit the thumbs up, then I'll give you a virtual high five. And if you want to hit the bell to be notified about future videos, that would be awesome. And if you have questions, if you have comments, if you have topics you would like for me to cover in future videos, hit me up, reach out. I'd love to do that. And work with the contract people. Thanks. Bye. One song. How do I word this song? Not sound like an idiot. The first thing on my list is everything. Revision clause is the very top of my list. I'll tell you a quick story. I like telling stories. I'll tell you a quick story. Having to spend 4 months working for that $2,500. If I agree to